How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a BMW M4 convertible from 2015. Yes, my friend has very kindly lent me this car for around about 2 weeks for me to go out, have fun and enjoy. And I thought after a week of driving the car, I'd give you guys my thoughts on it, but most importantly, answer the question as to whether now these cars are really good cars at a relatively low budget. You can get these now for under £30,000 relatively easily. Maybe not this one specifically, as this one only has 20,000 miles on it, but these have come down so much in price, from over £70,000 when new all the way down to, yeah, around about 20 grand at the lowest end. 20, sort of 25, 26 is what I would expect to pay for one with around about 50, 60,000 miles on the clock. And that is a lot of car for the money, as I'm going to talk to you about in this video. I know you've probably seen a million M4 reviews, so I specifically wanted to take it down the route of whether or not this is now a bit of a bargain. Remember to like, comment and subscribe for more car content. Without further ado, let's get into the video. And so here, directly behind me, you should see this stunning BMW M4. And by the way, ignore the scuff marks on the side here. One of the reasons why I have this car for this time is because whilst it was parked up as it's a street park car in London, it was impacted by a truck or something. So I'm also getting it fixed in my time of owning it. Don't worry about that. But it really is genuinely a stunning car to behold. And my friend who owns the car spec'd it from brand new, exactly as you see before us. I actually used to prefer the non-convertible version of these. So I thought they looked nice, had a better roofline, a slightly more aggressive rear end. But actually, I think that rear end looks so good, particularly with the top down on a sunny day like today. It's just so nice. Let me run you through the specs very quickly. It's in stone grey metallic, and if you kind of walk around the car a little bit, you get a little bit of an iridescent blue maybe. I think it's probably just reflecting the sun or the sky or whatever, but ultimately when you walk around the car you get a lot of blue in that grey as well. To kind of complement that blue as well, you get these blue calipers behind the alloys, which are super nice, and they really complement the spec of the car. And by the way, look at the size of these discs. They are absolutely huge. And just for your reference, let me show you what it looks like with the roof up. Give me 2 seconds. I think in total the process takes about 20 seconds or so. I did once get caught out some lights. I think you have to be doing less than like 10 miles per hour in order for it to do it whilst you're driving. So I did get caught out once in some lights. But other than that, it's a relatively quick process. Close up the windows nicely. Stunning. And I mean, the car does look very pretty like this. I mean, look at that. So yeah, as I was saying, that roof line that I mentioned, I actually thought I preferred the coupe instead of the convertible, but having now driven this car in convertible spec, it is absolutely stunning with the roof down. It is way more of an event than it is in the coupe. But today's super hot and sunny, so maybe put that roof back down. Love this thing, man. It's like a proper transformer, isn't it? But irrespective of whether you prefer the coupe or the convertible, I genuinely think the BMW have done a great job by actually having a hard top convertible roof, just like they did on the M3 in the previous generation. One thing that kind of puts me off the C63 AMG and similar cars is that if you get a convertible, you have to go for a soft top roof, and I much prefer a nice hard top. I just think it looks better. It works better for our climate here in the UK as well, where most of the year we spend with the roof up. Yes, it might be slightly more expensive to fix if it goes wrong. Yes, it's slightly heavier on the car, but you also don't have to do quite as much maintenance to it to make sure that it keeps looking nice. Plus, I think this just looks so sick. So let me walk you around the car very quickly. So as I mentioned, stone grey metallic, looking very pretty across the board. And as I'm doing this little walk around here, hopefully you can start to catch some of that blue that you get out of the paint as well, which is really nice. Obviously, it's not a competition, so you don't get the competition alloys, you don't get the sort of extra random carbon bits around the car, but it still, in my opinion, looks very pretty and is a little bit more classy than a competition. And the person who owns this car is probably a classier guy than someone who would own a competition as well. Speaking of classy, check out the cream leather interior in here. The two-tone with the black and cream over there on the door card, and then obviously the cream seats as well. Very comfortable these seats are to sit in, really nice. But also what's beneficial about these is they don't get super hot on days like today. Like, it's still warm, but relative to like the black seats that I've seen in these before, and also the black seats in my convertible, these are way nicer. As you can see here, this one is also an automatic, so it's got the DCT 7-speed gearbox. box. It changes really nicely. We'll get onto all of that when we get out for a drive in the car. As you may know if you watched any of my previous videos, I am definitely more of a fan of manuals, but I think in this car, the auto box helps make it feel that little bit more special or exotic. The materials in here feel relatively premium. There is some plastic, as you can see there, as you can see here, but all of this stuff here, the nice leather, yeah, this all feels very, very nice and comfortable, considering this car has been used for, what, 6 years now. And most of the stuff on the bottom here feels quite hard wearing too, and obviously get the nice M4 door sills as well. I should probably speak about performance as well. This car has a 3-litre inline-6 that is twin turbocharged. It puts out 424 brake horsepower and 550 Newton meters of torque, which is a huge increase over the previous generation M3 convertible, coupe, etc. They only had 414 brake horsepower and around about 400 Newton meters of torque, so way less torque, and you genuinely really feel that in the drive. But it's also worth noting that you can get those M3s now for around about £15,000, whereas this is obviously going to take you back 25 to 30k. And before we jump in and go for a drive, which is probably more what you're here for, I wanted to briefly touch on practicality. I know you've probably seen a million M4 reviews by this point, but I think we should talk about it. So I'm getting around about 25 to 26 miles per gallon at the moment, which is what the manufacturer suggests. I've been driving it relatively calmly and comfortably. I've driven it around maybe 200, 250 miles in the time that I've been driving it for the last week. I can confirm that you can fit 4 people quite comfortably into the car. As you can see here, there is legroom. There is space for you to put your legs. Maybe a little bit tight if you're 6 foot and above, but it's not too bad. There's actually a little bit less headroom in the rear than you might want, maybe, but still, I mean, it goes up far enough for these, so yeah, you can get in there. As I mentioned, the roof opens and closes relatively quickly. I've managed to open and close it in traffic whilst driving when I've needed to. Of course, it has all the relevant parking sensors and reversing cameras, etc. The car definitely feels very big when you drive it. Like, it feels like a very big car the whole time I've been driving this. You really need to watch out for how wide the wheel arches are on it. If I come back here and have a look, you can see they stick out actually quite a fair bit. And then on the inside, there's a whole bunch of other stuff to help you. So the actual cockpit is quite nice, added onto the fact that the navigation system is really easy to use. Multimedia is great. The sound system is unbelievable. So as I might have mentioned, the Harman Kardon speaker system in here is really good. So he's got the better speaker system in here, the upgraded one, which is super nice. And yeah, from a practical perspective, I can genuinely see this car being used as a daily. And I took it out at the weekend with my girlfriend. We drove down to Hever Castle in it, and she loved it. I loved it. It was just a great time. We could definitely see ourselves owning one in the not too distant future as our daily driver. Yes, maybe slightly more expensive to run than something that'd be cheaper, but compared to cars like the previous generation V8 M3, you're laughing. And I just think it looks so good, man. Anyway, less of this nonsense. Let's jump into the car and take it for a drive. So, what is this car like to drive then? Honestly, on a day like today with the roof down, it could be any other luxury car. It is so comfortable. I've heard a lot of people complaining about the suspension being too stiff, and maybe this is just personal preference, but I genuinely think it's quite nice. It gives you enough road feel that you kind of know what's going on. It's certainly not a luxury car suspension. It's not super soft or anything, but I don't think that it's back braking or anything like that. Any of those kinds of claims I think are wildly just wrong. Yes, if you turn into Sport Plus mode, it does get a bit stiffer and a bit more focused, but that's because you're in Sport Plus mode. It's like you don't ask a luxury car to give you amazing road feel in terms of the way that it drives, just in the same way that you don't expect a premium sports coupe to do the same. If I knock it into automatic mode, it is a very comfortable car to cruise around. You don't really need to do anything. You just sit there and the car does most of the work for you. I actually don't like it in automatic mode because I think that it's a little bit too easy to drive. So I like to knock it into paddle mode instead, and it feels a little bit more fun, a little bit more engaging to drive instead. And it also means that you can rev out some of the gears a little bit, which is bad for the fuel economy, but great for my personal enjoyment. The one thing I'd say that makes this car a little bit more effort to drive is the fact that it's a little bit wider than your average car on the road, so you have to really think about where you're placing the car as you drive it. I'm sure that's something that you get used to over time if you own a car like this for a really long time. One thing I was quite worried about when I was given the car to drive was that it wasn't going to sound good enough, and now that is because when you go from a V8 to an inline 6, you definitely lose some of that key like burble or grumble that the car had beforehand. If I drop it down a gear though, it is absolutely fine. The noise is really, really nice. It's not like the V8. It isn't as aggressive. It isn't as throaty in the way that it makes its noise. But that's not to say that it isn't still nice. And also, I genuinely think that even though I was sad to see the V8 go, and I really love that V8, and I might even buy one of those cars at one point in the future if I can afford it, I still think that the inline six is a good idea by our friends at BMW, because ultimately, with the way that the world's going, they need to make sure that they are being as efficient as possible, caring about the environment, all the other good stuff, and they know how to make inline sixes. BMW make inline six engines, is what they are renowned for doing. And so by going back to their roots, doing an inline six engine and just focusing on making it as good as possible in terms of giving it the twin turbochargers to get that torque out of it. Honestly, I cannot tell you how good that torque feels. The torque really, really boosts you along and sends you forward in a way that the previous generation didn't quite have. When you drive this car really fast and you put your foot down, you really do feel the grunt of it behind you, and I think that's just such a nice novelty, because it makes you feel like you're in a more exotic car than you probably really are. And I personally kind of need that, because the rest of the time that I've been driving this car, no one even looks at it. I get the odd look, like that guy back there was staring at the car and that kind of stuff, but in general, no one notices, because you are ultimately just in a top of the range BMW. You're not in a supercar, you're not in something really, really special. It's special to those of us who like cars and are into cars, and particularly people who are BMW enthusiasts. Obviously you guys will love an M4, but to the average road user or to the average pedestrian, they're not looking at an M4 and thinking, wow, what an amazing, like, stunning car. They're thinking like, oh, nice BMW, maybe. The gear changes are so smooth. My girlfriend was commenting on this the other day. Normally when we're driving a car, particularly my MX-5, which has pretty savage gear changes to say the least, this, you don't even feel the gear changes in automatic mode or in manual mode as well. Either way, the gear changes are super smooth. You'll have noticed that currently I've shied away from talking about corners. Now, yes, the car handles perfectly fine around corners. It is an adequate car for going around corners, but this is where I kind of think it drops into the more daily driver and cruiser category. It goes quite nicely around corners in Sport Plus mode in particular. The one thing I would say is that this car is definitely an Autobahn style car rather than a car that's built for track days and that kind of stuff. Feels generally pretty tight in corners and pretty solid. I would just say that there's a little bit of understeer if you get on the throttle too early. The back sometimes wants to step out. It's not perfect, I would say, in the corners. Absolutely fine for driving around and just enjoying yourself, but if you were trying to go really fast on track, it might feel a little bit different. One thing that is ready for the track though is those brakes. They absolutely anchor the car down to the floor. It's exceptional. You can stop on a dime, as people like to say in the US. If you hit into the back of someone in one of these, you either weren't paying attention or you were properly tailgating them, because I have no idea how you do it otherwise. Don't know if you can catch it on camera, but there's another M4 back there, and that actually leads me on to a point that I wanted to make around these cars and their exotic nature, or lack thereof. And that is that ultimately, as I mentioned with other people around not really looking at the car and thinking, oh, mad exotic, there are loads of other M4s on the roads. I have seen so many of them. I've cruised along with a whole bunch of them. And this can either be a positive thing or a negative thing. Because of the amount that there are out on the roads, they don't draw that much attention, so they're quite an understated exotic, if you want to use the term exotic, maybe just like top of the range car, whatever you want to call it, premium car. And because they're understated, you don't really get too many looks, no one really is taking pictures, no one's doing anything like that. It's just a nice BMW. In comparison, when I've driven other exotics like the Alfa Romeo 4C, for example, everyone's staring, everyone's taking pictures. It's a very different experience, and I can't really compare the two from that perspective. If you like a flashy and showy supercar-esque style feel to your car, the M4 is definitely not the car for you. It's not going to garner the attention that you're after. If you want something that you can take to the shops without fear of someone disliking you or harassing the car or getting stopped because people just want to have a look at your car and that kind of stuff, then yes, the M4 is definitely the right car for you, because it does all of the things that the 4C does. Like, it does 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds with the convertible roof, 4 seconds if you've got the coupe instead. Sounds great, it looks great, you'll have a great time driving it, but it keeps quiet about it to some degree. And it just gives you so much enjoyment when you send it. So much enjoyment. Now let's think about some of the competitors to this car. I mentioned beforehand the C63 AMG. If you went for one of those in convertible as well, you're probably going to spend around about 35 to 40,000 pounds at the bare minimum. So you're looking at around about 10 to 20,000 pounds more money, and yes, you get a nice twin turbocharged V8, although I think it's slightly less good on miles per gallon, which I can't confirm, so check that one for me in the comments if I'm wrong. But as I mentioned as well, you also get a soft top roof instead of the hard top, and I definitely, in the UK at least, prefer the hard top. If I was in a really hot country, like if I was buying a car in Portugal, maybe I consider the C63 over the M3. I have no real preference either way between Mercedes and BMW. I just like cars, as you probably know by now if you watch the YouTube channel more broadly. But for me, hard top convertibles definitely do it over soft tops, and that's what makes this car particularly alluring to myself. And before I answer the question as to whether or not I think this car is a great buy at the sort of 25 to 30,000 pounds range, let me just quickly show you what I think is the key benefit to this car, which is driving it on motorways. I'm not going onto a motorway right now, I'm going onto a 70 mile per hour A road instead, but that's kind of where this car really just dominates for me. The car was clearly built for Autobahn driving, and so therefore it just handles the road so well. So look, cruising along at any speed, and I'm talking about any speed, it just feels comfortable. It just feels so comfortable. It clicks up to the gears super nicely and very quickly, and it just does its job. It's crazy the speed you'll suddenly find yourself doing without realizing it, just because it feels so comfortable across the board at all these different speeds. Oh mate, this is taking way too long, let's go around. So again, just cruising along, just feels perfect. Even with the roof down, I just feel super chill. Before this week, I had no interest in buying a BMW M4. After this week, and I've got another week's worth of time with the car as well, I am starting to think that as a daily driver, maybe it's worth stretching a little bit further on my budget and going for something like this. I think it would be great fun to own and drive. I think it'd be great fun to live with. And to answer the question as to whether or not I think it's worth the money for 25 to 30 grand, I think it is. You probably know by now that I hate depreciation on this channel. Look, there's another one. There's another M4 convertible. Yes, mate. You probably know by now on this channel that I don't like depreciation. Depreciation is one thing that I'm trying to keep myself as far away from as possible. So I'll probably always buy used cars rather than... Whoa. Nearly had a crash there, not very good. Person not paying attention in this Suzuki Celerio in front of me. They're gonna drive into me. Woo! Anyway, yeah, I hate depreciation. I've got no interest in buying a car that is going to depreciate. So now that this has come down so far, and maybe you'll see a few go sub 20k in the future, I think that this is a very good buy, and you get so much car for the money, it's insane. Everyone questions BMW's reliability, but I think that this car will do you nicely. And now I have to do the very unenjoyable part, which is filling it up with fuel. So give me 2 seconds. So yes, fuel acquired. Now, in terms of, as I was saying about the car's value, yes, I do believe it is probably worth 25,000 to 30,000 pounds, whatever it is you decide to spend, at 35,000 pounds even. I think the car is probably worth that kind of money right now, but only if you know the reason why you're buying it. If you're buying it to have an exotic car ownership experience, it's not the right car for you. If you're buying it to have an uprated premium daily driver that kind of sets itself apart from the rest of the cars available on the market in terms of a few key factors, then yes, maybe it is for you. And if you're a BMW enthusiast in particular with the money to buy one, I don't understand why you didn't have one already, unless you have a comp instead, in which case it makes perfect sense, and more power to you for owning the comp. So I hope that was helpful for some of you. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to hit the like button. I would really appreciate it. Subscribe as well if you're new. I would massively appreciate that as well, because that will help me to be able to afford one of these, hopefully in the not too distant future. Massive thank you to the patrons for their continued support, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.